We're nearing the completion of our fence cattle gate project, and so there's another product that we're going to begin attaching to the fence, and you can find these in the same section of the store where you purchase your fence panels at. And these are these clips that basically just kind of wrap around the rails on the fence panel and then attach to the fence itself. And for the middle rail and the lower rail, we're not going to have any issues there, but the top rail, because we did incorporate that angle iron into the fence, we are going to need to notch around the clip so that it'll sit. In order to accommodate the angle iron being able to fit through the clip, we're just going to basically kind of cut a section like this out of the clip. And I think if I kind of show you with the Sharpie, the clip itself kind of already has a pretty cool pattern inside of it that's going to facilitate this. So pretty much where I'm drawing with the Sharpie is where we're going to cut and just sort of leave this little outside trim section. And we're going to do that with the jigsaw. So let's go do that right now. This is our finished piece. As you can see, we left the bottom open so that when we're sliding it over that angle iron, we can get it right where it needs to go. That should look pretty nice, and we'll show that over on the fence. And when you're running the jigsaw on this, because it is pretty fragile, you might want to spend a little time playing with the speed of your blade to make sure that it doesn't crack in your hands while you're trying to cut it. All right, so since we have this piece notched out, it's just going to slide in right down here over that top rail and just in this little space that exists between the post and the rail. And these are the finishing caps that just slide on top and give you a really nice, pretty finished look. So I want to take a moment to show you the next step in the process. Is that for the bottom of the fence panels, we're trying to figure out a way that we could prevent the panels, if the wind was blowing, from starting to kick out the bottom. Basically just making sure that they're nice and plumb and basically pointing up and down. And kind of thought in this instance, sometimes a simple approach is maybe the best approach. So we just kind of went with good old-fashioned zip ties. They're going to do a really good job of securing that bottom rail to the gate tube, and they have a lot of strength, but there isn't going to be a lot of pressure on them anyway. And so the thought that we were thinking about was just running them through the fence panel itself and then wrapping around that tube. Initially we tried using a little bit of a larger drill bit, but it's really not aesthetically pleasing. So then kind of came up with a method where we just use a little bit of a smaller bit and just kind of drilled in 3 times in a row to create just the size that we need for the zip tie. Another thing to consider as well is that if you take a look inside of the fence panels themselves, you have these structural supports. And so one thing that's going to help a lot is when you're trying to figure out a good location to screw through and to run that zip tie, is try to find a section of the panel that is right in between those supports so that you're going to get all the strength that you can get. So let me just show you quickly how we're going to create the little slit in the fence panel that we're going to use to then run the zip tie through. You can also get a little creative with your drill bit if it doesn't fall out, and you can kind of move it from left to right to sort of use it to carve the plastic a little bit too, and then give you a nice slit that you can run your zip tie through. I'm just going to show you how to drill those holes where we're going to run the zip lines through. All right, so I'm just going to slide that through there and then wrap it around the bottom over that rail and then attach it to the other side of the fence. We finished the installation of the zip ties on the bottom rail, and we've now installed the caps on either side of the post. And so now we are ready to begin the cutting of the post height, and we're going to make sure that it's the same height as all the other posts by using a pole line. So we've pulled our surveyor's line, and it's now touching the top of each of the posts that have already been cut. And so this is the post that we're going to go ahead and cut. And what I like to do whenever I'm working with a surveyor's line is just kind of pull it back and let it snap back to whatever it is that I'm trying to mark, just to make sure that it isn't getting caught perhaps on a piece of wood or a splinter or anything of that nature. And then just kind of keep doing that to recheck to make sure, yeah, this is exactly where we want it. And also make sure there isn't any obstruction in the way that be giving it a false height. But this looks good. So next we're gonna use our carpenter square. We're gonna scribe this line all the way around the post, and then we're gonna set up a Sawzall and cut the post top off. We've got the fence panels now securely attached to the cattle gate, and so I thought it'd be a good opportunity to do a little fine tuning, because even though the cattle gate itself is plumb, because it does have this fence panel attached to it, I think we're going to do a little bit of tweaking, because I noticed that right here on this second fence panel, it seems like the camber is off a little bit because we're not plumb with the 6x6, so we're going to play with that. And I also want to double check and make sure that this post is in the same vertical plane as the other posts. And I also want to check the rails as well to see if they're consistent with the pitch of those rails. So we're going to pull a whole bunch of surveyor's lines and just sort of start tuning and tweaking the arrangement of the fence panels a little bit. We're going to begin installation of the lock assembly now. This is a dual or a two-way lock, so it allows for the gate to open to the exterior or the interior. In the future, I think I might change my mind on that and just install a one-way so that it only opens out. But for the time being, this is what I purchased, so let's just work with it for the time being. And we know that this 6x6 post here, this isn't its final position, and it's gonna move. And it actually isn't in concrete right now. It's just been buried 18 inches down into the soil. So it is stable, but temporary. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna place the lock where we know it belongs. And then I'm gonna use some furring strips to fur it out from the 6x6 so that we'll know exactly where we need to place the 6x6 in the future to ensure that it's gonna latch properly with the gate. So we've got the furring strips all cut out now, and from some initial measurements that I made of the fence and gate opening, it looks like we're going to need about 4 of the furring strips, and each of these are probably about ½ an inch thick, so therefore about 2 inches worth. And I want to get the furring strips attached to the backside of the lock first so that I can have them in place when I found out the correct height to place them at. So let's go ahead and do that right now. We're wrapping up the furring strips that we're adding to the lock mechanism. I just went over there and checked, and it looks like using 3 of them is going to fit just fine. But an important little lesson here that I've learned is, instead of putting that last one on at the same height as the others, the better thing to do is to put one on that's a little bit taller and a little bit shorter, because that allows me that when I'm up against that post, now I have locations that I can still screw with. Otherwise, if it was the same height, I wouldn't have any way to screw it to the post. So let's go do that. This is the super temporary lock that we put in place, and it's just to allow us to have a better idea as to the relationship between the position of the 6x6 and the gate itself. And so I'll just show you the closing mechanism, which is, you know, pretty intuitive. Just locks like that. Lift this up, opens, works really well. We do have the gate screwed into the 6x6 post sleeve, but inside of the post sleeve we do have a 4x4 Douglas fir. So we switched out to some 3-inch screws here at the top and the bottom to make sure that we're actually really into the meat of some wood. So even though it is temporary, it's not going to tear off or fall off or damage the post. And until we figure out the positioning of where our 6x6 is going to be in the end, and we might also end up making some adjustments to the hinges for the cattle gate, this is going to work just fine until we get that all figured out.